Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving into a topic that touches, well, pretty much every human life, often profoundly.
Hmm.
Forgiveness. It's something we crave, something we often struggle with, and something that, as our sources show, can be a genuinely radical path forward, both for personal healing and, maybe even societal change.
Indeed. And for this deep dive, we've pulled from two fascinating, quite distinct texts. First, there's Forgiveness, a study guide, which offers a more, let's say, meditative and practical approach, how to integrate forgiveness day to day. And then we have The Forgiveness of Sin by John Owen, a really deep theological exploration from back in the 17th century.
Wow, okay, so quite different angles there.
Definitely. And our mission today is to sort of extract the most vital insights from both these perspectives, helping you understand forgiveness not just as some abstract idea, but as a powerful, transformative force that's actually accessible.
Right. We're going to explore why it's so essential for our well-being, what it really involves from both the human side and the divine side, and how embracing it can profoundly reshape, our inner worlds and our outer worlds too, moving beyond those ancient laws of retaliation.
That eye for an eye stuff.
Exactly. Towards some surprising paths for personal and spiritual growth. So yeah, get ready to maybe rethink what you thought you knew about letting go. Let's start with the basics, that very human experience of being wronged. When we're hurt or betrayed or just feel that sense of injustice, there's often this innate pull towards, what is it, lex talionis.
Lex talionis, yes. That eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth instinct. It feels quite natural, doesn't it, to want balance or even a bit of retribution?
Totally. It feels like restoring some kind of order.
It does. And what's fascinating is how John Owen, writing way back then, describes the state of being without forgiveness. He paints a really stark picture. He calls it being in depth places of horror, helplessness, and trouble. Pretty intense words.
Yeah, that sounds heavy.
He talks about a revived sense of justly deserved wrath, almost like constantly opening old wounds or trading afresh with hell, curse, law, and wrath. His point is that without forgiveness, we're basically trapped in this self-made prison of past hurts.
Constantly replaying the pain.
Exactly. And the judgment we feel, whether from others or ourselves, he asks, if God were to mark iniquities, to hold every single wrong against us, who shall stand? It's a powerful way to show that inescapable burden of unforgiveness.
So just to make sure I'm getting Owen right, he's saying without some way to find forgiveness, we're all just stuck in this cycle, this loop of pain and judgment, feeling like we deserve punishment.
That's precisely his argument. For Owen, it's an unavoidable reality of the human condition without intervention. The law itself, he argues, just points towards eternal ruin if there's no way out. That's the predicament.
Okay. And this is where it gets really counterintuitive, doesn't it? Because in such stark contrast to that natural pull for payback and Owen's bleak picture, the study guide brings in the teachings of Jesus.
Absolutely radical teachings.
Right, like, do not resist an evildoer, but if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. Or even love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I mean, that doesn't just feel different, it completely flips the script on human instinct.
It absolutely does. And Owen, despite his intense focus on human sin, finds his resolution right there. He asserts, but there is forgiveness with thee, with God. But he's careful. He differentiates between what he calls a common notion of God's mercy.
Like a sort of cheap grace idea.
Kind of, yeah. He worries that this common idea can actually stifle consciences, make people a bit too casual about wrongdoing, even, he says, make them love sin the more for it. He contrasts that with a true gospel discovery of forgiveness. This one, he says, comes from God's infinite goodness and grace, where God actually delighteth in pardon.
Delights in it.
Yes. And this deeper understanding, Owen argues, acts as a great preservative from our being under the power of sin. It actually empowers us to live better.
That's a really key distinction. It's not just waving things away. It's a deeper, more intentional mercy.
Yeah.
And that ties in beautifully with that question from the study guide, doesn't it? Have we made our God too small?
Exactly.
And be open to being expanded by God. It's about recognizing that God's ways, his thoughts, they aren't ours. His ways of pardoning are just infinitely higher. It's an invitation to broaden our view.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, Owen really emphasizes that this kind of deep forgiveness, well, it isn't cheap. It wasn't easy. He states very clearly it's procured by the blood of the Son of God. He links it directly to these big theological concepts like redemption.
Which means like being bought back.
Right, bought back or set free from a debt. And also propitiation, which is basically a sacrifice that satisfies divine justice, appeases it. So for Owen, Christ's death is the procuring cause of that pardon. And his resurrection, his personal discharge after completing his work, serves as a kind of pledge or guarantee for the forgiveness given to us.
Okay, that's quite a framework.
It is. And this, he argues, is how God can extend free condemnation, discharge, or pardon, basically, letting us off the hook while still being perfectly just. It's about reconciling infinite mercy with a perfect justice.
So let's bring this down to earth a bit. What does this all mean for us, for you listening? How do we actually access this kind of forgiveness that sounds so huge, so costly? Is it something we have to earn through, I don't know, good deeds or suffering?
Owen is really clear on this point. He says, reason's line is too short to fathom the depths of the Father's love, of the blood of the Son. Basically, you can't logic your way into it. Forgiveness, he insists, is revealed only to faith. It demands a full assurance of faith, a complete trust in this divine act.
So it's about trust, not earning.
Precisely. And in terms of our response, he talks about something called evangelical humiliation. Now, this isn't despair like, say, Cain's guilt in the Bible. It involves self-abhorrency, a deep, genuine dislike for sin itself. But crucially, it's a feeling that propels us forward. It makes us actively pressing after forgiveness, seeking it, not running from it.
That idea of pressing after forgiveness, that's captured so well in the study guide with the parable of the prodigal son, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A classic example.
The younger son hits rock bottom, recognizes his mistakes, his unworthiness. But the father, he doesn't wait for an apology tour or proof of change. He sees him coming, is filled with compassion, runs to him, embraces him, throws a party. It's immediate, unearned forgiveness, pure grace in action.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how this grand divine forgiveness, from Owen's theological view, connects directly to our own capacity to forgive, even forgiving ourselves. The study guide points out that authenticity involves self-forgiveness, and that this might involve things like grief, some allowances, and inner generosity to develop what it calls a bigger heart.
A bigger heart. I like that.
It suggests our inner conflicts and layers of inner peace project onto the outside of our lives. So that internal work of forgiving yourself, it directly impacts your relationships and how you see the world.
That's a really powerful link. So it's a cycle. God forgives us, we forgive ourselves, we forgive others. But how do we actually do that? How do we navigate it practically without falling back into that old trap of thinking we need to earn our peace or earn forgiveness from God or anyone else?
Owen gives a really helpful, crucial rule here. He says, mix not too much foundation and building work together.
Foundation and building.
Okay.
What does he mean?
The foundation, he explains, is Christ alone, mere grace and pardon in him. That's the unearned, freely given forgiveness. That's the base. The building, then, is holiness and obedience. Our good works, our efforts to live a better life, the transformation that happens. He warns that trying to bring our obedience, duties, mortification, our efforts to fight sin into the matter of pardon, trying to make them part of the foundation. Well, he calls it an abomination unto the Lord.
Wow. Strong words.
Very strong. Essentially, you cannot earn forgiveness with your actions. Instead, he says, true gospel obedience is the fruit of the faith of forgiveness. Our good works, our changed lives, they flow from having received forgiveness. They aren't the way to get it. It flips the whole dynamic.
That is incredibly liberating, isn't it? That our efforts are a response, not a requirement. And the study guide, it offers some really tangible practices that seem to resonate with this, ways to help us live it out. Like it mentions an opening meditation using an image of a bush track, guiding you mentally from discomfort into a clearing of hope and resolution,
Right.
like actively shifting your inner state.
A practical tool for that inner work.
Yeah. And there's also that ritual of setting down the stone, physically symbolizing letting go of burdens, maybe resentments, maybe guilt. And the reflection on scripture part suggests looking at our beautiful common home, planet Earth, to renew our wonder and ask again, have we made our God too small? It's a constant callback to that bigger perspective of grace.
And we see this lived out in real lives, historically and now. Think of Julian of Norwich, the medieval mystic. In the middle of a terrible illness, she had these profound visions, these showings, revealing this deep experiential grasp of divine love and forgiveness. She actually prayed for recollection and feeling of his blessed passion, and to receive 3 wounds: contrition, compassion, and a longing for God's will. Her life shows how forgiveness can be a path to insight, even amidst suffering.
It's not just an abstract concept then.
Not at all. It's a lived reality.
And the study guide brings it right up to date too, mentioning figures like Felicity McCallum, an Awabakal elder in Australia. She uses forgiveness in her work healing children and fostering reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. She believes profoundly that there is no human heart or relationship that cannot be healed through forgiveness.
It shows the real-world relational power of this principle, even in tackling deep historical wounds.
Okay, but sometimes, even with all this understanding, the journey just feels hard. Really hard. What about when we're just plagued by doubts? Maybe about how bad our own mistakes are, or whether we're even worthy of receiving this kind of huge gift. How does Owen speak to those struggles?
Owen tackles those head-on. He acknowledges that internal conflict is real. He argues that sensible, powerful actings of indwelling sin are not inconsistent with a state of grace. Basically, struggling with sin doesn't mean you're not forgiven or loved. Even great spiritual figures like David and Paul experience these depths, this keen sense of sin, while also having assurance of God's promises.
So the struggle itself isn't proof we're disqualified.
Not at all. He states quite unequivocally that no argument can be drawn from affliction, from any kind of it, that should discourage us from believing in God's love and forgiveness.
No.
In fact, sometimes he suggests hardships, even fiery trials, might actually be God's way of preventing worse outcomes, steering us toward greater reliance on grace.
That's very reassuring, especially when we tend to be our own harshest critics. And he gives that really direct advice too, doesn't he? Be not judges of your own condition, but let Christ judge.
Yes, it's almost bracing advice. He explains that Christ's judgment is final, it's infallible. If you hear his word and believe, Owen says, you shall not come into condemnation. It takes that heavy burden of self-assessment right off your shoulders.
Let the judge be the judge.
Exactly. And this is where his concept of plenteous redemption really shines. He says God's mercy is boundless. It's suitable for the greatest sinners in their greatest depths. He emphasizes God's constant invitation. Come to him. He compares it to an embassage with conditions of peace, like a diplomat sent from God offering reconciliation.
An open invitation.
Always open. But he does give a stark warning. Neglecting this incredible offer, choosing instead the power of unbelief, our own stubbornness, our self-judgment, that, he says, can lead to a sorer punishment than breaking the law itself. Because it's rejecting the cure, rejecting the offered peace.
So ultimately, it really comes down to embracing that boundless invitation, not letting our own judgment or a feeling of unworthiness or even just fear stand in the way of accepting this amazing gift, accepting it from God, and then in turn finding the strength to extend it to ourselves and out to others. It's a radical act of trust, really. We've covered a lot of ground here. From that primal urge for payback, all the way to the, boundless and transforming power of forgiveness, both divine and human. It's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. And this deep dive, I think, shows that forgiveness isn't just, the absence of punishment. It's a deliberate, costly, infinitely generous act of God made accessible through simple faith. And that divine act is meant to be mirrored in our own lives in self-forgiveness and healing relationships. Owen wasn't exaggerating when he called it the greatest work that God did ever perform.
So if what you've heard today stirs something in you, maybe a longing for deeper peace or a way to resolve some lingering hurt, or even just a new sense of your own worthiness, consider this. If God, who is described as infinitely holy and just, so ardently desires to extend this boundless forgiveness to you, what might be holding you back? Holding you back from receiving it fully, or maybe from extending it to someone else, or even yourself. For some further exploration, you might check out Robert Waldinger's popular TED Talk, What Makes a Good Life? Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness. It touches on the power of relationships, which forgiveness deeply impacts. Or for a different cultural perspective, look up Rabbi Jonathan Sachs's address, We Live in an Unforgiving Age. It's really interesting thoughts there too.